The Great Hall of the Galactic Assembly was the largest structure ever built by any species in the known universe. It floated in the empty space between three star systems, a monument to peace and cooperation. Inside its massive dome, representatives from 847 different species gathered to discuss trade, law, and the future of civilization itself. Today, however, the hall was silent. Every eye, every sensor, every appendage capable of attention was focused on the raised platform at the center of the room. There, standing 12 feet tall with scales that shimmered like liquid metal, was High Sovereign Kethvaros of the Volanthi Dominion. The Volanthi were ancient. They had conquered half the galaxy before most species had learned to make fire. Their empire had lasted 12,000 years, and in all that time, no one had ever successfully stood against them. They were proud of this fact. They mentioned it often. The Terran species has committed crimes against our sacred dominion, Kethvaros announced, his voice booming through translation devices in every corner of the hall. They have filled our trade routes with their ugly ships. They have spread their disgusting culture to worlds that should worship Volanthi greatness. They have polluted the purity of galactic civilization with their presence. Ambassador Elena Vasquez of Earth sat in the human section, a small area near the back of the hall. Humanity had joined the Galactic Concord exactly 1,000 years ago. They had arrived as newcomers, their technology primitive, their understanding of galactic politics almost non-existent. The elder races had looked at them with amusement. Humans were short-lived, emotional, and strangely obsessed with concepts like revenge and spite. They were considered harmless, useful only for simple labor and occasionally entertaining conversations. Elena listened to the High Sovereign's speech with her hands folded in her lap. Her face showed no emotion. Beside her, her aide Marcus was quietly recording everything. Furthermore, Kethvaros continued, his tail sweeping dramatically behind him, a human traitor dared to insult my lineage. He called the Volanthi overgrown lizards with a god complex. This insult cannot be forgiven. This insult demands blood. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Several species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. War declarations were rare in the Galactic Concord. The last one had happened 3 centuries ago, and it had ended badly for the species that made it. The High Sovereign raised one clawed hand for silence. Therefore, I, Kethvaros, Supreme Ruler of the Volanthi Dominion, Master of 17 conquered worlds, Destroyer of the weak, do hereby declare total war upon the Terran species. They will surrender unconditionally within 40 standard cycles, or they will be erased from existence. The hall erupted in whispered conversations. Delegates turned to each other with expressions of shock, curiosity, and in some cases, barely hidden excitement. The Volanthi had not declared war in over 2,000 years. This was historic. All eyes turned to the human section. Protocol demanded that Ambassador Vasquez respond. She was expected to plead for mercy. She was expected to offer tribute, territory, anything to avoid the wrath of the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Species had begged before. Species had wept. Species had offered their own children as slaves. Elena Vasquez stood up slowly. She looked at the High Sovereign for a long moment. Then, to the shock of every being in the assembly, she laughed. It was not a nervous laugh. It was not a polite diplomatic chuckle designed to ease tension. It was a genuine, deep belly laugh that echoed through the ancient hall. She laughed so hard that tears formed in her eyes. She laughed so hard that she had to grip the railing in front of her to keep from falling over. The silence that followed was absolute. "I am sorry," Elena finally said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Could you please repeat that? You are declaring war? On us? On humanity?" Kethvaros stared at her with an expression that mixed confusion with growing rage. In 12,000 years of Volanthi dominance, no species had ever laughed at a war declaration. The very concept was impossible to process. "You dare mock the Volanthi dominion?" he hissed, his scales shifting color to a deep, angry red. "You dare show disrespect to the mightiest empire in galactic history?" Elena was still smiling. It was a strange smile, one that made several nearby delegates unconsciously move away from her. "Oh no, High Sovereign, I am not mocking you. I am simply trying to figure out how I am going to explain this to my people back home without them dying of amusement." She turned to Marcus. "Can you pull up the files? The actual files?" Marcus nodded and pressed a button on his tablet. A holographic display flickered to life above the human section, large enough for the entire assembly to see. "For 1,000 years, Elena began, her voice calm and clear, humanity has played a role. We smiled when you insulted us. We accepted trade deals that cheated us. We let other species take credit for our ideas. We did this because we wanted peace. We genuinely, truly wanted peace." The holographic display began showing images, ships, weapons, technology that made the Volanthi military analysts in attendance go pale. "But we were not stupid," Elena continued. "We used those 1,000 years to learn, to grow, to prepare, just in case someone decided that our politeness was weakness." She pointed at the display. "Your weapons technology, High Sovereign? We passed it 300 years ago. Your fleet? It is impressive, I admit. But ours is larger. We have been building in star systems that your scouts have never found, because we did not want them to find those systems." Kethvaros opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. "Humanity spent its entire history fighting itself," Elena said. "We are very, very good at war. We stopped because we wanted to try something different. We liked peace. It was relaxing." Her smile faded slightly. "But if you truly want to wake us up, High Sovereign, if you truly want to see what humanity is capable of when we are not being polite," she let the sentence hang in the air. "You have 40 cycles to withdraw your declaration," she said. "I suggest you use them wisely." Then she sat down, folded her hands in her lap, and waited. The Galactic Assembly remained frozen in stunned silence. In the back of the hall, a small insectoid delegate leaned toward its companion and whispered the question that was on everyone's mind. "What exactly have we been living next to for the past 1,000 years?" No one had an answer. Admiral Chen Wei had served in the Terran Defense Initiative for 43 years. He had commanded ships, planned operations, and trained thousands of officers. But he had never done what he was about to do now: tell the truth to an audience that was not ready to hear it. The Galactic Assembly had requested a full briefing on human military capabilities and history. They wanted to understand how a species they had dismissed as harmless could have hidden so much for so long. Ambassador Vasquez had suggested that Admiral Chen was the right person for the job. He was direct, honest, and had a way of making complicated things simple. He was also, as he often reminded his staff, too old to care about being polite. The chamber was packed. Representatives from every major species had demanded seats. Even species that usually ignored galactic politics had sent observers. The Volanthi had sent a full delegation, led by General Threnvac, one of their most decorated military commanders. Admiral Chen walked to the speaking platform without ceremony. He was a short man by human standards, with gray hair and a face lined by decades of service. He looked out at the sea of alien faces and began speaking without introduction. "You have spent 1,000 years wondering why humans are strange," he said. "Why we celebrate our defeats as much as our victories. Why we tell stories about heroes who died in losing battles. Why we have sayings like, 'What does not kill me makes me stronger.' Today, I'm going to explain. He pressed a button, and the holographic display came to life. It showed a blue and green planet, beautiful and fragile, floating in the darkness of space. This is Earth, our homeworld. 67% of its surface is water. It has one moon, one sun, and approximately 8 billion years of remaining habitability. He paused. It also nearly killed us about a dozen times before we ever left its surface. The images changed. They showed ancient battlefields covered with bodies, cities burning, weapons that made the ground itself catch fire. We did not become strong by fighting other species, Chun explained. We became strong by fighting ourselves. For most of our history, human beings killed other human beings over territory, resources, religion, ideology, and sometimes for reasons we cannot even remember anymore. We invented war. We perfected it. We made it into an art form. The chamber was silent. Many species had violent histories, but there was something in Chun's voice that suggested human violence was different, deeper, more systematic. By the time we developed nuclear weapons, we had already fought 2 global wars that killed over 100 million people. Our entire planet was divided into factions that pointed weapons of total destruction at each other for decades. We came within minutes of ending our own civilization multiple times. General Threnvuk spoke up. If your species was so violent, how did you survive? Chun looked at him. We almost did not. Several times, we almost did not. But there is something in humanity that refuses to die. Call it stubbornness. Call it spite. Call it an irrational belief that tomorrow might be better than today. Whatever it is, it kept us going. The images shifted again. They showed humanity's expansion into space, the first colonies, the early struggles of a species learning to live beyond its homeworld. When we finally reached for the stars, we brought all of that history with us. The knowledge of how to fight, the technology we had developed for killing each other, the tactical and strategic doctrines we had refined over thousands of years of conflict. Chun's expression was grim. We also brought our determination to never let it happen again. I do not understand, said a delegate from the Harmonic Union, a peaceful species known for their music and art. If you wanted peace, why did you hide weapons of war? Chun nodded, as if expecting the question. Because we had learned something that peaceful species never learn. We learned that wanting peace is not enough. You must be able to defend peace. You must be strong enough that those who would take your peace decide it is not worth the cost. He let that sink in. When humanity joined the Galactic Concord, we saw immediately that we were surrounded by predators. The Volanthi had conquered 17 species. The Kreth Dominion had enslaved billions. The Void Hunters had committed genocide against species that no longer existed. We looked at the galaxy and saw our own history reflected back at us, just on a larger scale. General Threnvak shifted uncomfortably. The histories Chen mentioned were not secrets, but they were rarely discussed so openly. We made a choice, Chen continued. We would appear weak. We would let the predators dismiss us as harmless. We would smile and trade and pretend to be simple newcomers who pose no threat to anyone. And while we did that, we would prepare, quietly, secretly, for the day when someone decided to test us. He changed the display again. It now showed the full scope of humanity's hidden military. Thousands of warships, defense platforms, automated weapon systems, and things that several species could not even identify. That day has come, Chan said. High Sovereign Kethferos has declared war on humanity. He believes he is threatening a weak, primitive species that will crumble at the sight of his fleet. The Admiral's voice hardened. He is wrong. He looked directly at the Volanthi delegation. I am not here to threaten you. I am not here to boast about our strength. I am here to give you information so that you can make an informed decision. What decision? General Threnvac asked, whether to proceed with this war. Chun's voice was calm, almost gentle. Because if you do, you will lose. Not because we are stronger than you, although we are. Not because we are more advanced, although we are. But because we have already been through our apocalypse. We have already stared into the abyss and crawled back out. We know exactly how bad war can get, and we know exactly how to wage it. He turned off the display. The Volanthi have conquered species that did not know how to fight. You have never faced an enemy that was born from war, shaped by war, and survived war. You have never faced humanity. The chamber remained silent long after Admiral Chun had finished speaking. The Volanthi delegation exchanged glances filled with uncertainty. General Threnvac looked down at the data tablet in his hands, which contained a summary of human military capabilities that his analysts had verified. The numbers did not lie. The humans were not bluffing. 25 cycles remained until the ultimatum expired. General Threnvac found himself hoping, for the first time in his career, that his High Sovereign would choose wisdom over pride. The days following Ambassador Vasquez's response were unlike anything the Galactic Assembly had ever experienced. The normal business of galactic governance ground to a complete halt. Trade negotiations were forgotten. Border disputes were ignored. Every species, from the mightiest empire to the smallest single-planet civilization, was focused on one question. Had the humans been lying for 1,000 years? High Sovereign Kethvarus had retreated to his flagship in a rage. His advisors reported that he had destroyed 3 pieces of furniture and executed 2 servants before calming down, enough to demand answers from his intelligence services. Those answers, when they came, did not improve his mood. We have analyzed the technology shown in the human display, his chief scientist reported, trembling slightly. It is beyond our current capabilities. Some of it is beyond our theoretical understanding. Impossible, Kethvaros snarled. The humans are primitives. They were primitives when they joined the Concord, and they are primitives now. With respect, High Sovereign, the evidence suggests otherwise. Their displayed weapon systems operate on principles we have never seen. Their ship designs are... The scientist paused, searching for the right word. Elegant, efficient, deadly. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Assembly, representatives from dozens of species were demanding explanations. The Coordination Council, the governing body of the Concord, called an emergency session. Ambassador Vasquez was summoned to answer questions. She arrived, alone, walking calmly through halls filled with beings who now looked at her with a mixture of fear and fascination. She took her place at the speaking platform and waited for the questions to begin. Ambassador Vasquez, the council speaker began. Your display yesterday has caused significant concern among member species. We request clarification. Was the technology you showed authentic, or was it a bluff designed to discourage Volanthi aggression? Elena smiled. It was becoming her signature expression, and it made several council members uncomfortable. It was authentic. In fact, it was somewhat outdated. We did not want to reveal our current capabilities. Murmurs spread through the chamber. How is this possible? Demanded a Volanthi representative who had remained in the assembly. Your species has no major industrial centers. Your fleet consists of cargo vessels and light patrol ships. Our intelligence has observed your military capabilities for centuries. Your intelligence, Elena said patiently, has observed exactly what we wanted it to observe. Humanity learned very early in our galactic membership that we were surrounded by older, stronger civilizations. Many of them, like the Volanthi, had histories of conquest and domination. We decided that the safest course was to appear harmless while preparing for the day when someone would decide to test us. She pressed a button, and new holographic images appeared. They showed asteroid bases hidden in the dark spaces between stars, factory stations disguised as debris fields, shipyards built inside hollowed-out moons. "We have been building for 600 years, Elena explained. "Our public fleet, the ships you have observed, represents perhaps 2% of our actual naval capacity." The chamber fell into shocked silence. A delegate from the Meridian Collective, a species known for their mathematical precision, stood up. "Ambassador, your species numbers approximately 40 billion individuals across your colonies. The infrastructure you are describing would require a workforce of at least 10 billion dedicated workers. Our census data shows no such allocation of your population." Elena nodded. "Your census data is correct. We do not have 10 billion dedicated workers." She paused. "We have automation. We have machines that build other machines. We have artificial intelligence systems that design, manufacture, and maintain our hidden infrastructure with minimal human oversight." "Artificial intelligence?" The Meridian delegate sounded alarmed. "Such technology is restricted by Concord law. The development of self-improving machine intelligence is forbidden." "We know," Elena said simply. "We developed it anyway, in secret, because we knew that someday we might need it." The implications of her words spread through the chamber like a wave. The humans had not simply hidden their military. They had hidden an entirely different level of technological civilization. They had broken Concord law repeatedly and systematically for centuries, and no one had noticed. "Why are you telling us this now?" the council speaker asked. "If you wanted to maintain your secrecy, why reveal everything?" Elena's expression softened slightly. "Because we are tired of pretending, and because we want you to understand something important." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many delegates as she could. "We did not build our hidden military to conquer you. We built it to protect ourselves and honestly, to protect you as well. Protect us." The Volanthi representative laughed bitterly. "From what?" "From threats you do not even know exist," Elena replied. "The galaxy is not as safe as you believe. There are things in the dark spaces between stars, things that would destroy every civilization in the Concord without hesitation. Twice in the past 3 centuries, such threats have emerged. Twice, they were destroyed before they could reach Concord space." She let that statement hang in the air. "We never told you because we did not want to cause panic. We handled the problems quietly and went back to our work. That is what humanity does. We see a problem, we solve it, and we move on." The council speaker leaned forward. "You are asking us to believe that humanity has been secretly defending the galaxy for centuries, expecting nothing in return." "I am not asking you to believe anything," Elena said. "I am telling you what happened. Whether you believe is your choice." She stood straighter. "But I will say this. High Sovereign Kethvarus has declared war on a species that has been standing between him and extinction for 300 years. I thought he should know that before he makes any decisions he cannot take back." She bowed slightly to the council and walked out of the chamber, leaving behind a room full of beings who were beginning to understand that they had never really known their human neighbors at all. In his flagship, High Sovereign Kethvarus received a report of the ambassador's testimony. He read it 3 times, then sat in silence for a very long time. For the first time in his ancient life, he felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. The humans were not supposed to be like this. They were supposed to be simple, emotional creatures, easy to dominate and control. Instead, they had apparently been playing a game so complex and long-term that the Volanthi had never even realized. They were pieces on the board. He looked at the countdown timer on his wall. 32 cycles remained until his ultimatum expired. For the first time, he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. The Volanthi War, as historians would later call it, lasted exactly 17 hours from the first sensor contact to the last ship leaving human space. It was the shortest war in galactic history, and the only one ever won without a single weapon being fired. When General Threnvac's fleet returned home, they brought with them the truth. They shared the recordings of humanity's secret wars, the evidence of 2 extinction-level threats that had been destroyed before anyone knew they existed. They told stories of a species so powerful it could have conquered the galaxy, but chose to protect it instead. High Sovereign Kethvaros tried to have Threnvac executed for treason. He ordered the fleet to ignore the general's surrender and prepare for a renewed offensive. He demanded loyalty from his advisors and obedience from his people. He received neither. The Volanthi had ruled through fear for 12,000 years. They had conquered species that were weaker than them and crushed any resistance with overwhelming force. But fear works only when people believe they have something to fear. And the Volanthi people, upon learning that humans had been protecting them for centuries while asking nothing in return, began to question everything their rulers had told them. 3 days after General Threnvac's return, the High Sovereign's own council removed him from power. It was not a violent overthrow. It was simply a quiet announcement that Kethvaros no longer spoke for the Volanthi people. He was given a choice: accept retirement in his ancestral palace or face trial for his actions. He chose retirement. He would live another 500 years in comfortable isolation, watching as everything he had believed about the galaxy was proven wrong. The Galactic Assembly convened an emergency session to address the new reality. For 1,000 years, the Concord had operated on certain assumptions: that the elder races were supreme, that humanity was a minor species of little importance, that the galaxy was safe under the protection of species like the Volanthi. All of those assumptions were now dust. Ambassador Elena Vasquez addressed the assembly for the final time in her role as humanity's representative. She was being promoted to a new position, one that did not yet have a name, because the galaxy had never needed such a position before. For 1,000 years, she said, humanity has pretended to be less than we are. We did this because we wanted peace, and we believed that the best way to achieve peace was to avoid making enemies. We were probably wrong about that. The deception has caused harm, and for that, I apologize. The chamber was silent, but it was not the hostile silence of previous sessions. It was the silence of beings genuinely listening, genuinely trying to understand. We cannot undo what has been done, Helena continued, but we can choose what happens next. Humanity has a proposal for the Galactic Concord. We propose that the current system of hierarchy, where elder races dominate younger ones, be abolished. We propose a new alliance based on mutual respect and shared purpose. We propose that every species, regardless of age or power, have an equal voice in galactic governance. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Such a proposal would have been laughable a month ago. Now, with the evidence of human power still fresh in everyone's minds, it was taken seriously. We also proposed the creation of a joint defense force, Elena added. A fleet drawn from all member species, dedicated to protecting the Concord from external threats. Humanity will contribute our technology, our expertise, and our resources. In return, we ask only that other species do the same. You would share your technology? Asked a delegate from the Meridian Collective. Even the artificial intelligence systems you developed in secret? Elena nodded. Yes, all of it. We have no interest in keeping secrets anymore. We have no interest in being feared. We want to be trusted, and trust must be earned through openness, not deception. The vote took place 3 days later. It was not unanimous. Some species were too proud to accept equality with those they had once looked down upon. Some were too afraid of the changes that would come. But the majority, a strong majority, voted to accept humanity's proposal. the Galactic Concord, died that day. In its place rose the Galactic Alliance, a new organization with new principles and new leadership. General Threnvac, the Volanthi officer who had refused to attack, was appointed as the first chairman of the Joint Defense Force. Ambassador Vasquez became the first Secretary General of the new alliance, responsible for coordinating relations between all member species. It was not an easy transition. Old grudges did not disappear overnight. Species that had been enemies for millennia found it difficult to work together as equals. There were arguments, conflicts, and moments when it seemed like the new alliance would tear itself apart before it had truly begun. But humanity was patient. They had waited 1,000 years already. They could wait more. 5 years after the Volanthi War, a young Volanthi diplomat named Casvara requested a private meeting with Secretary General Vasquez. She was the grandchild of one of the officers who had served under General Threnvac, and she had grown up hearing stories of the day her grandfather had chosen peace over pride. "May I ask you a question?" Casvara said after the formal greetings were complete. "Of course," Elena replied. "Why did you laugh? When the High Sovereign declared war, why did you laugh?" "I have read the records, and I still do not understand." Elena was silent for a moment, remembering that day in the assembly. It seemed like a lifetime ago, though it had been only 5 years. "Because I had seen what war truly was," she finally said. Humanity had been through the worst of it. We had burned our own world, killed billions of our own people, and somehow survived. When your High Sovereign stood there, threatening us with something we had already done to ourselves 100 times over, I could not help but see the absurdity of it. "Like a child threatening a storm," Casvara said softly, quoting something her grandfather had once said. "Something like that." Elena smiled. "But there was another reason, too. I laughed because I was relieved. We had spent 1,000 years pretending to be weak, always wondering if someone would call our bluff. When your sovereign declared war, I knew the pretending was finally over. We could stop hiding and start being ourselves. That was worth laughing about." Casvara considered this. "Do you think the galaxy will ever truly trust humanity? After all the secrets, all the deception?" Elena looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships patrolled alongside vessels from dozens of other species, all working together to protect the civilization that spanned a significant portion of the galaxy. "Trust takes time," she said. "We are willing to wait. And in the meantime, we will keep doing what we have always done, protecting people, solving problems, and trying to leave the galaxy a little better than we found it." She turned back to the young diplomat with a warm expression. "That is what humanity does. We see a problem, we solve it, and we move on. The only difference now is that we do not have to do it alone." Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the small beings who lived among them. But those beings were no longer alone in the darkness. They had found each other, learned from each other, and finally understood that the galaxy was large enough for all of them. A new dawn had begun. And humanity, after 1,000 years of waiting, was finally home. The Volanthi did not withdraw their declaration of war. High Sovereign Kethvarus was old. He had ruled for 3,000 years, and in all that time, he had never backed down from a challenge. His pride would not allow it. His legacy would not allow it. The very idea of a Volanthi sovereign surrendering to threats from a species that had joined the galaxy only a millennium ago was unthinkable. So, he ordered his fleets to advance. 12,000 Volanthi warships moved toward human space in perfect formation. They were magnificent vessels, each one a testament to 12 millennia of military engineering. Their weapons could crack planets. Their shields could withstand nuclear strikes. Their crews had trained for generations in the art of conquest. General Threnvac commanded the lead formation from the bridge of the dreadnought Eternal Dominion. He watched the stars streak past as his fleet traveled through hyperspace, and he felt something he had never experienced in 3 centuries of military service. Fear. The human briefings had disturbed him, not because of the weapons they had shown, though those were impressive enough. What disturbed him was the way they had talked about war. There was no glory in their words, no celebration of conquest. There was only a tired understanding of violence and its costs. They spoke of war the way a doctor speaks of disease, as something terrible that sometimes cannot be avoided. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of human territory. Sensors immediately began scanning for the human response. They did not have to wait long. Ships appeared. Not dozens, not hundreds. Thousands of ships emerged from hidden positions throughout the system. They came from asteroid belts and gas giant moons. They came from stations that had looked like debris. They came from the dark spaces between planets, where no one had thought to look. General Threnvac stared at the tactical display as the numbers climbed. 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. The count kept rising until his sensors could not keep up. "All ships, hold position," he ordered, his voice calm despite his racing hearts. "Defensive formation. Do not fire unless fired upon." A communication channel opened. A human face appeared on his screen. Admiral Chun Wei, the same man who had briefed the Galactic Assembly. "General Threnvac," Chun said. "I see you have arrived." "Admiral," Threnvac replied formally. "Your fleet is larger than we expected. This is approximately 1/3 of our available forces," Chun said matter-of-factly. We did not want to seem like we were overreacting. Threnvac felt his scales go cold. 1/3. The humans had over 100,000 warships in this system alone, and it was only 1/3 of their navy. The Volanti had brought everything. Their entire military might was represented in the 12,000 ships now surrounded by an ocean of human vessels. "General," Chun continued, "I want to show you something before this goes any further. Something that might change your perspective on what is happening here." The communication channel expanded to include all Volanti ships. Every screen, every display, every device capable of showing images was suddenly broadcasting a message from humanity to the galaxy. It began with a star map. A familiar star map showing the regions of space controlled by the Galactic Concord. Then the perspective shifted, zooming out to show the wider galaxy. The unexplored regions beyond Concord borders. The dark spaces where no known species had ever traveled. A point of light appeared in that darkness. Then another. Then a line moving toward Concord space. 273 years ago, a human narrator explained, our long-range sensors detected an approaching threat. A fleet of unknown origin, traveling from outside the galaxy. Their ships numbered in the millions. Their technology was designed for one purpose: consumption. They fed on inhabited worlds, stripping them of all life before moving on. The images showed the alien fleet in detail. Ships that looked like organic nightmares, covered in spines and tendrils. Weapons that fired beams of energy that dissolved matter at the molecular level. Swarms of smaller craft that moved like insects, overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers. "We called them the Devourers," the narrator continued. They had destroyed an estimated 30,000 civilizations across multiple galaxies. They were coming for the Concord. At their speed, they would have arrived approximately 150 years ago. Threnvac felt his breath catch. 150 years ago, he had been a young officer, just beginning his career. He had no memory of any galactic threat. Humanity intercepted them at the edge of the galaxy, the narrator said. The battle lasted 6 months. We lost 47% of our fleet. But we won. We destroyed every Devour ship before they could reach Concord space. We never told anyone because we did not want to cause panic, and because we knew the Concord would ask questions about how we had built a fleet capable of fighting such a war. The images changed. Another threat. Another secret war. This one had happened just 80 years ago. A machine intelligence from a dead galaxy, traveling between star clusters, consuming resources to build more copies of itself. Humanity had intercepted it in the void between galaxies and destroyed it after a 3-month campaign. Twice, the narrator concluded. Humanity has stood between extinction and the civilizations of the Galactic Concord. Twice, we have bled and died to protect species that never knew they were in danger. We did this because we believe that life is precious. We did this because we believe that civilization, for all its flaws, is worth protecting. The message ended. Admiral Chun's face reappeared on Frenvash's screen. We could have ruled this galaxy, Chun said quietly. We had the power. We had the opportunity. But we chose not to. We chose to be guardians instead of conquerors. We chose to protect instead of dominate. Threnva could not speak. His crew was frozen at their stations, staring at the evidence of 2 secret wars that had saved their entire civilization. Your High Sovereign has declared war on the species that saved your people from extinction, Chun continued. He did this because a traitor called him a name. I want you to think about that, General. I want you to think about what kind of empire you are serving and what kind of future you want for your children. The human fleet did not move. Their weapons remained cold. They held position, waiting. I am giving you a choice, Chun said. You can follow your sovereign's orders and attack us. We will defend ourselves, and we will win, and many of your people will die for nothing. Or you can choose differently. You can choose to end this before it begins. General Frenvek looked at his crew. He looked at the tactical display, showing the overwhelming human forces surrounding him. He looked at the evidence of 2 secret wars fought to protect species that had never shown humanity anything but contempt. Then he made a decision that would change galactic history. All ships, he said slowly. Stand down. Power down weapons. Signal the fleet. We are withdrawing from this system. General, his second-in-command protested. The High Sovereign will have you executed. Perhaps, Threnvik said. But I will not order good soldiers to die fighting the species that saved us all. I will not be responsible for that dishonor. One by one, the Volanthi ships began to power down their weapons. One by one, they broke formation and turned back toward home, on the bridge of the human command ship. Admiral Chen Wei watched them go. Sir, his tactical officer said, should we pursue? Chun shook his head. No, let them go home. Let them tell their people what happened here. He smiled slightly. The war is already over. We just won it without firing a shot.